Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prizepicks.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 348, presented by CLNS Media and our good friends over at Prizepicks. If you have time, please subscribe to our Bruins Ringside YouTube channel, where you have pretty much daily content between Poke the Bear, Bruins Beat with Evan Marinofski, Pucks with Haggs with Joe Haggerty. We have you covered every step of the way this Bruins season. So follow along with us over wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. And also follow along with us over on our YouTube channel where you get the latest videos. Please hit the notification button when you find out when you're going to get new videos dropping pretty much every single day. This episode is also brought to you by Prizepicks, North America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download today and use code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. Prizepicks, run your game. My name is Conor Ryan, and as you can see, we're doing a solo pod today. I'm over in Europe. I'm over in Greece. It is approximately 120 degrees out. I am staying out of the sun because, if you can already maybe tell, it's not, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's not the tint or anything like that. I have been nuked. I have been fried. I've only been here for a couple of days, and I am on the ropes. I am avoiding sun poisoning, and I figure what better way to duck out the heat, avoid the sun, and talk a little bit of Bruins with you guys. So again, this is a solo episode. We're going through our usual mailbag format for this one. I reached out on Twitter to get information, get some questions from all you fans, and I know it's kind of the quiet part of the season, the off season. We already gotten past free agency, dev camp. A lot of cap space has already been used up, so there's not really too much going on between now and the start of training camp in September, but you guys still sent over a ton of great questions. So I got over 30 total questions. We're going to do 5 or 6 for this episode, dive into some of the top questions out there. And then also later on this week online over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe, I'm going to dive into a few more questions. I'm trying to think of a new format for us to roll out over on Boston.com. And I figured maybe doing a on-site mailbag where, I'm able to do it maybe couple times a month where I ask for questions and then we kind of dive into what you guys want to know about this hockey team. Trying to start that up as a new kind of system and a new format, see if we can get the ball rolling. Because I feel like this year especially, there's going to be a lot up in the air, a lot of questions, maybe some concerns about the direction of this team and where they're going. So I think bringing in some new format with these types of stories will be pretty useful this year, especially if we get more input from you guys, the fans, who have obviously been with this team thick and thin and also have been great in terms of working with, getting input from, getting these great questions. So we'll see if we can kind of get the ball rolling starting off this offseason with this type of format. But without further ado, I think we should just dive right into the questions. There's no situation here where me and Evan are shooting the crap about the weather, anything like that, or holidays. No, we're going right into it. So I think what better way to start off these questions than probably the topic that I think Bruins fans are most excited to talk about this upcoming year, which is James Hagens and the Bruins prospect pipeline. Again, it's going to be, I think, a bit of an uphill climb this season for the Bruins in terms of how legitimate their chances are of being a playoff team. So I think a lot of focus is going to be on that next wave of talent. And thankfully, it does feel like the Bruins have had a little bit more of a stronger prospect pool over the last year or so. I think you're going to have to need that if this Bruins team is going to get back into contention. So this first question is from a good friend, Marcus Antonelli, who I think everyone has probably seen on social media. He does great work diving into the Bruins prospects, other things going on across Boston sports. He's great with graphics, great with drawing up things that really map out, stats, information like that. He's also going to Boston University this upcoming year, help cover the BU hockey team with the Daily Free Press and the Boston Hockey Blog. So shout out Marcus. Please follow him on all social media. I'm sure, again, if you've been following the Bruins online for the last couple of years, you've seen his work and his graphics. So definitely toss him a follow. And Marcus's question today is, aside from James Hagens, which Bruins prospect is the most intriguing for you this upcoming season? Great question. I do think you look at, what has been the knock against the Bruins the last couple of years has been that lack of high-end talent or intriguing talent within their system. And I'm not going to say that all of a sudden the Bruins have a top 10 prospect pool, right? And I think once you get past James Hagens, there is a a drop off in terms of elite top line, top six talent. Like again, there are some question marks with a guy like James Hagens as to what he can be at the NHL level, but I think you look at the skill, the skating ability. He has all the tools of being that type of player, a guy that can be, maybe he's not going to be a superstar talent, but again, I kind of compare him more to like Logan Cooley, who maybe isn't the flashiest player, but is a damn good player that is going to help out Utah for the foreseeable future. I think James Hagens can be that, can serve in that role for the Bruins. But then after him, you've got a lot of guys that are up in the air in terms of what their ceiling is at the NHL level, how far away they are. So I think one guy that obviously has a lot of intrigue in terms of maybe his ability to help out this team right away is Fraser Minten. That's a guy that I think you look at the way this Bruins team is constructed right now, and there's obviously so many guys in the bottom six that are taking up spots that are more veterans, right? You've got, Tanner Jeannot, you've got Sean Corrali, you've got Mark Kastelik, you've got all these players that fill into those spots, Mikey Asimont, right? That it does feel like it's pretty crowded at that segment of the roster. But I think if you're the Bruins and you're looking to, if this is going to be kind of a bridge season where it's, you hope you put things together, but it's still going to be a work in progress in terms of this team getting back to being a legitimate contender. I think it's important to give your younger players some run here. And I think a lot of people look at Matt Poitras as a guy that's going to be first in line, but I feel like if you're looking for especially that spot of the roster, and you're looking for like a third line center that can really help out your team this year, even with some growing pains, but could really step into that role and develop moving forward. I really like what Fraser Minten could provide in that spot. This is a guy that, was a teenager when a team like Toronto, which has a lot more forward depth, gave him an opportunity for some reps. I don't think his ceiling is a top six center because I don't know if the offense is going to be there, but he kind of reminds you a little bit of someone like Charlie Coyle, right? And as much as I think maybe some people look at Coyle as a divisive player, a guy that is tough to kind of gauge his output, is it realistic to expect like a 60-point year from Charlie Coyle? No, right? That was the one outlier, and that kind of doomed the Bruins in terms of looking at last year and expecting that to be the norm. But if you're looking for a third line center that can stay in that spot, can do a little bit of everything, can give you 40 points a season, play a really strong two-way game, win faceoffs, can play the body, I think Fraser Minten projects as that type of player. Everyone you talk to, whether it's with Toronto, with Boston, they love his makeup. They love his, his skill set and how easy it is to project at the NHL level. So I think that's a guy Bruins fans should really keep tabs on in training camp. And I think you hope that he makes a legitimate push because even if this is going to be a Bruins team that is pretty backlogged in terms of their bottom six, if he's the guy that takes a big step forward this year, that's someone who I think could make the team out of camp. And ideally, I think we've mentioned this multiple times with Evan, with Ty, that if this is a year where the Bruins don't make the playoffs or come up just short, but you're looking for silver linings, if you can go into next year and all of a sudden you know that Fraser Minten's your third line center for the future, you're all set. Like you can, as much as we look at training camp battles and all that stuff, if you can put Minten in as your 3C from 2026 to 2032, like how much pieces start falling into place in that regard. So I like Minten's game. I think he's a guy that Bruins fans should be really keeping tabs on. And then I think maybe a few guys that are a little bit further away, but I think Bruins fans should really, watch moving forward. I think Will Zellers is an easy one. He's a guy that was a great pickup from the Bruins as part of the Charlie Coyle trade with Colorado, was the USHL Player of the Year, really productive player in that spot. For a Bruins team that is really short in terms of high-end offensive talent, Zellers knows how to put the puck in the back of the net. I think he was impressive at Dev Camp with that in terms of, he's not just a guy that's going to pepper the net, right? It's not like he's, generating all these chances because he's attempting, 10, 11 shots. He's a guy that knows where to find soft areas of the ice. He's really deceptive with the puck on his stick and makes a lot happen. So if he can, translate what he did at the USHL over to college this upcoming year at North Dakota, I think there's a lot to like about what he can provide for this team. And I think you start seeing a lot more momentum generated as being, a type of guy that, is he going to be a 30-goal scorer? that remains to be seen. But if, let's say, he has a really strong freshman year at North Dakota, all of a sudden, as you're trying to piece together this team moving forward, and you're like, all right, you have Hagens, you have a few other guys, you have the obvious holdover established players like the McAvoys and the Pasternaks and all that. But if all of a sudden Will Zellers is a guy that in a couple of years could be a middle six contributing player, that's huge for this team. So I think he's a guy that you really want to keep tabs on in college, and then maybe a player that is going to be in the USHL this upcoming year, but I think was really impressive at Dev Camp was Cooper Simpson. Kind of like cut from the same cloth as Zellers, a really skilled goal scorer, was really productive at the high school level in Minnesota this past year, but also had a really strong end to the year in the USHL with Tri-City. So he's going to spend the entire year with Tri-City in the USHL this upcoming season. Young player, is not going to be a finished product. He's going to have a couple of years away from, legitimately making a push for the NHL, but he's a guy that you look at his skill level, and if you end this upcoming year and he's a player that was one of the more productive young players in the USHL and he's got 30 goals for Tri-City, you like where this Bruins prospect pool is getting deeper in that spot, where all of a sudden you have a lot of guys that they're not all going to hit. They're not all going to be 30-goal guys. They're not going to be top-line players, but it just makes your prospect system so much deeper when you have some of these players that at least have the makeup and the skill to really elevate your team in the next couple of years. So those are the guys that I'm keeping tabs on. Again, thank you for the question, Marcus. I think we're going to get a lot of questions if we do these mailbags in terms of checking in on some of these younger players because, again, the Bruins' best chance of getting back to being a contending team is some of these younger players hitting and making an impact in the next couple of seasons. Next question is from Court Lalonde, who I think people are familiar with. He's obviously done a couple of shows with Evan, and they've been great together. Court has been a diehard Bruins fan, loves talking hockey. So if you guys want to follow him on social media as well, he does pretty much nonstop Bruins content throughout the season. He's a great job at it. And Court's question is actually to me, and it's, was the coffee better in Europe? Court, I don't want to disappoint you, but I'm not sure if you know this. I've been to Greece. I've been to Spain so far, stopped over in London. London was the best place. And do you want to know why? Because they had Dunkin' Donuts. I have not found one Dunkin' Donut in Spain so far that I've been. I haven't had any of it in Greece. And I don't know what it is over here, but it's 110 degrees pretty much every single day. There's no iced coffee. There's no cold brew. The only time I had cold brew over here, it was literally just a Starbucks, and I don't think you're dealing with the top brass in terms of Starbucks over here in Europe because I had the cold brew and it was like straight concentrate, and it was terrible. It was not good. So, listen, I know I'm going to offend a lot of people, but I know that you got the cappuccinos, you got the great coffee over here in Europe from Italy and Greece and all that. I'm not drinking hot coffee when it's 110 degrees out. I'm the guy that also is not drinking a hot coffee when there's a nor'easter in January or February. So that's my take. I know I'm probably wrong, but I'm going down with the ship there. So I have no regrets. I have not found a Dunkin' over here yet, so your boy is struggling, let's just say. Next question, getting back to hockey, is from @BostonGuy67, who asks, should the Bruins tank again with a chance of drafting a generational talent like Gavin McKenna? If so, who gets dealt at the deadline? Thanks for the question, Boston Guy. I would say right now you're looking at a situation where it's tough to really map out where the Bruins are going to finish, right? Because I think if you ask me right now, I don't believe they're a playoff team. I think it's very easy to map out like how this team could be competitive. And when I mean competitive, I'm not saying that this team is all of a sudden going to go and, finish second in the Atlantic or anything like that. I think if they're a playoff team, they're playing, white knuckle hockey in March and April and punching their ticket at the last minute. Maybe they're a wild card team. But I don't view this as a team that is going to be making noise from October through May, right? I think this is a team that you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. It all depends on whether they can get hot at the right time and play the brand of hockey they need to this year to be a tough out. So if Jeremy Swayman bounces back and the defense clamps down and they're winning games 2-1, Yeah, I can see them being a tough out, but I also feel like a lot needs to go their way for that to happen, right? Like you've got to have Swayman bounce back. You have to have the defense, which is not probably a finished product with their overall six-man unit, be one of the better units in the entire NHL. Need the power play to bounce back, and I just think especially the 5-on-5 offense. From talking to Mako Sturm earlier this month, he mentioned the importance of the power play getting back on track, and how if you got a good defense in a even middle of the road power play, that might be enough to have you win a lot more games than last year. And I get that. It's just, I think when you look at the lack of established scoring talent at 5-on-5 play, barring two or three surprises happening this year, right? If Matej Blumel makes a team out of camp and is the Czech version of Craig Smith, right? He's a 20-goal third-line guy. If Matt Poitras all of a sudden gets another look and clicks immediately and becomes a 40-point player, 50-point player, that changes things, right? If Tanner Jeannot ends up being a 20-goal scorer again, I don't think that's going to happen. But if two or three guys that they bring in pop, or guys that, maybe showed promise last year, take another step forward. If Morgan Geekie is still another 30-goal guy and builds off of what he did last year, then maybe this team is better than we all expected. But I just feel like a lot has to go their way for that to be the case. But I am curious as to where exactly the Bruins are going to fall in terms of like the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes. Like, I think you look at just their offense, there's a lot of teams even that are far worse than them, or maybe are viewed in that same tier as them, that I think have more offensive potential, right? Like even, Anaheim probably has more skill up front than the Bruins. Seattle's a team that, like, I think everyone is well aware of my opinion of Seattle, but I think they probably have more, at least, established scoring talent. Even I don't know, San Jose is not going to be very good, but they probably have maybe more skill in terms of young talent up front than the Bruins right now. So, I could easily see the Bruins being maybe a wild card team, but I could also see them being a top 5 team if injuries especially pop back up. But if the offense is really going to be struggling throughout the year, and maybe the defense bounces back and Swayman regains his form, but instead of maybe winning games 2-1, all right, you're not getting blown out like you were last year, but maybe you're still losing games 2-1. So I could see them being in the mix. And again, I think as you saw with this past draft lottery, as long as the Bruins are finishing maybe with a top 10 worst record, maybe they've got a shot at Gavin McKenna. I will say that I don't think the Bruins are going to intentionally tank this year or anything like that, because, again, playing the draft lottery and doing that, I think you're just asking for a lot of pain if that's the case. It also feels like it's going to be a given that Pittsburgh is going to get Gavin McKenna because they're due for another franchise player. But let's say even if the Bruins do finish top 10 and they lose out on McKenna, I think there's a lot to like about this draft class in terms of the other guys beyond him that I think can make an impact, right? You've got a lot of big body defensemen that are projecting on the top 10. That would be a great pickup for the Bruins. A lot of kind of power forward wings that are really impressive up in the Canadian level, up in juniors. That, again, if you're looking for another future top line left wing to future top line right wing, there's a lot of guys in that top 5 grouping that I think would really help out the Bruins. So I don't know if the Bruins are going to be, the front runners for a guy like Gavin McKenna this year, but I think kind of the same thing with Hagens, where he fell at number 7. I think if you're the Bruins and you have a top 10 pick this upcoming year, you're going to get a good player. You might get 2, because I think this draft is going to be deeper than last year's, and who knows where that Toronto pick's going to be. I think Toronto's still going to be good enough that maybe it's early 20s, but I think you can get a good player there as well. So, again, I'm not going into the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes yet. Maybe when Evan and I do our predictions in September, we'll do that again, and maybe we'll change our tune there. But that's more or less where I'm sticking with for right now in terms of where the Bruins are on the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes. We're going to talk a little bit more Bruins hockey, but before we do that, let's take another quick break. Hear from our good friends over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You know if you need to win to receive a $50 bonus, it's guaranteed. Think Shohei will get more than 3 hits? Maybe Garrett Crochet for more than 7 strikeouts. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this baseball season when you and your crew run your game on Prizepicks. Prizepicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prizepicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prizepicks also has a ton of promos, including Flex Friday. Make sure you opt in and tap the checkbox in the lineup builder to be eligible for the protected play. Choose squares from any game on the board. If your lineup does not win, you get your net losses back in promo funds up to your promo limit as soon as the lineup settles. And it's not just baseball. On Prizepicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite baseball players with players from basketball, hockey, esports, and much more. There's really no shortage of ways to participate in Prizepicks. This week, I'm looking at the board. I'm going to cover all my bases. I've got Roman Anthony for more than 1 home run and Mookie Betts for more than 3 extra base hits. It's really that easy. So download the Prizepicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS on the Prizepicks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks. Run your game. Shout out once again to our good friends over at Prizepicks. All right. This is a question that we've received from multiple submissions over on social media. So a few people, Captain Marshy at at Fartmongrel. Thank you as well for asking this question. And they're all phrased a little bit differently, but it all, I think, comes down to, should the Bruins trade a goalie before training camp? What are the Bruins going to do with Michael DiPietro? Are they going to trade Korpisalo? All around that same type of question. So shout out to everyone for asking that question. Headline, of course, by the great at Fartmongrel. In terms of what the Bruins will do, my gut is that I think they're keeping Joonas Korpisalo. I think you look at how they've mentioned that, Korpisalo himself said he wanted more playing time, and the Bruins seem like they agreed with his pretty candid take after the season ended of, instead of, giving the reins to Jeremy Swayman and letting him kind of play through his struggles, maybe he is a guy that is better suited to, not 50-50 split, but maybe more of a reasonable workload than what the Bruins were expecting going into this upcoming season. Maybe that is the right call. Again, if you're paying Jeremy Swayman that much money, you want him to kind of be that 60-game workhorse, but maybe that's not conducive. So if they kind of go back to that situation where you are giving more reps to Korpisalo, you're giving him an opportunity to get into these games when Swayman is struggling, and maybe that benefits all parties. You're giving Joonas Korpisalo more reps, obviously, which is what he wants, but also Jeremy Swayman, who's struggling to find his game. If all of a sudden he sees Korpisalo getting more reps, like, he's a competitive guy. It's gonna tick him off as well and try to get his game back in order. And I think that was an underrated part of why Swayman and Ullmark were so good together. Yes, their best buds were great together, were a great tandem when they both formed their game, but they're also 2 competitive guys. Like, they still want the net. When Jeremy Swayman ran away with the starting role in the playoffs 2 seasons ago, Ullmark was, of course, supportive, but yeah, like, he was very candid of like, yeah, I want the net too. Like, I'm going to support my guys, going to support my teammate, but yeah, I'm wired to want the net as well. So I think the Bruins are going to go with that option of seeing what Korpisalo has. But, like, I do agree with what I think a lot of Bruins fans have mentioned, that if you are able to find some sort of suitor for Korpisalo, and I'm not saying you're getting a top return, if you're able to move him and it frees up an extra $2 million or whatever it is, even if maybe you have to eat a little bit of money as part of it, right? Kind of the same thing where the Bruins are retaining a little bit of Brendan Carlo's contract. You take a little bit of it, but you get most of his money off the books, and you trade him to a team that could still use him, right? Like even Columbus or one of these teams that maybe just needs a number 2 option. Anaheim as a number 2 goalie could make some sense there as well. If you're able to find a trade suitor and move Korpisalo, I think if you are the Bruins and you're trying to go through this year and trying to figure out who are kind of part of that next wave, and a guy like Michael DiPietro, who is 26, has bounced around a lot between Boston and Vancouver across all the different levels of pro hockey, but had a great season last year with Providence, was the AHL goaltender of the year. if that's a guy that, even if there's going to be some ups and downs this year, but he's someone that you can look at and be like, all right, he is our number 2 guy behind Swayman, and we can bring him in, sign him for a more affordable deal than what Korpisalo was on, and save money at that position when you can allocate that extra. I know you're not going to sign an impact player off of what moving a majority of Korpisalo's contract will do, but I think it is something where if you are saving $1.5–2 million for the next couple of years, it adds up, right? Maybe that's the difference between signing a Matej Blumel, like a guy that's unproven that's going to sign for a cheap deal, or a guy that's available for $2 million that has more upside, or maybe you can sign a $4 million player instead of a $2 million player, right? Like it does add up if you are able to move off of Korpisalo's contract. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Bruins are still keeping their options open there, but I also feel like if they open camp with Korpisalo in that spot, they're also not going to be upset about it in terms of I think they want to give their backup more reps moving forward, both to get him going, but also I think to maybe light a fire under Jeremy Swayman and also maybe monitor him better off of what this past year was. Because again, regardless of what you feel about this team and their scoring and anything like that, this season is going to rest on whether or not Jeremy Swayman can regain his form as the number 1 goalie that the Bruins and their fans envision him to be. So I think that is definitely something worth keeping tabs on. We got one more question to go before we wrap this up. But again, take a quick break and talk a little bit about CLNS Media Network and everything we have over on our sites. Again, if you have time, please subscribe to the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel. We have daily content between Poke the Bear, Bruins Beat, Pucks with Haggs. We have you covered every step of the way this Bruins season. So follow along with us over at YouTube. If you don't like YouTube, you don't want to see my face, I get it. You can also subscribe and follow along over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your hockey podcasts. And the great thing with CLNS Media Network, it's not just the Bruins, obviously. You've got Patriots Press Pass. Training camp is underway over in Foxborough. And the team at CLNS has daily content, all throughout training camp, whether it's camp reports, whether it's videos of interviews of the players, other content. I know CLNS had the video of Stephon Diggs trying to chase the dog as part of the adoption drive over at Gillette Stadium. So there's fun content like that. There's great content if you're a football fanatic and want to get the inside information of what's going on over in Foxborough. Also, be remiss to not mention Celtics All Access, the team over there, whether it's the Summer League in Las Vegas, whether it's, again, talking about the offseason moves that have still yet to manifest for the Celtics. They have you covered every step of the way with pretty much daily content, talking all things hoops. So please follow along with us over at Patriots Press Pass, Celtics All Access, and the overall CLNS Media Network. So again, shout out to our entire team over at the CLNS Media Network, and please subscribe to all of our various channels. All right, let's wrap this one up with one final question from @BromTheB. And Brom asks, is it possible that Hagens signs his entry-level contract and then starts the season in Providence? All I hear is how he should go back to college for one more season. Wouldn't P. Bruins be better for his development versus BC? Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Thanks for the question, Brom. I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to whether or not the Bruins are wanting to give Hagens a look at the NHL level, or if it's going to be a situation where they want to keep him at Boston College for another year. I don't think there's going to be it's not the situation where he's going to start the year in Providence or anything like that off of what his ELC is going to be. But I think if you're the Bruins, and I know James Hagens has mentioned time and time again that he wants to be a Bruin as quick as possible. He thinks he's ready for the NHL. I think the smarter move this year is to go back to BC, dominate with a team that even after losing guys like Perreault, Ryan Leonard, they're going to be a great team. I think for Hagens, it's a good way to kind of just start building that momentum. This is a guy that's very confident in his abilities, has a chip on his shoulder after falling from the consensus number 1 player in his draft to number 7 overall. I get from his perspective of going right to the NHL and making an impact, but I think if you're the Bruins, you don't want to rush this player who is, I'm not going to call him a franchise savior, but is easily your best prospect in years, like a guy that has all the makings of being a top 6 game-changing talent for this team, which they so desperately need. I'm not rushing him up to the NHL level and, you bring him up for opening night and he has a goal and everyone's fired up, and then he goes 10 games without a point and he's getting rocked because he's just not used to the physicality at this level. I'm not saying that one more year at BC is going to mean he's going to make a seamless transition, but I think if you're the Bruins and you're mapping out what you want from that type of player, I think you bring him back to BC as a sophomore. He's the top player on that team, where instead of deferring to guys like Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard, he's going to be the top player for the Eagles. He's going to have the puck on his stick a lot more. He's going to be a lot more assertive, driving to the net front, being more creative offensively instead of just dishing it to guys like Leonard. I fully expect that, you're talking to a BU alum here, so I don't want to give the Eagles too much credit, but I would not be surprised if Hagens has like a 50-point season as a dominant player for the Eagles. I just think there's so much to like about his skill set after another year in his belt. And if he can do that, be an impact player for the Eagles, go on a deep playoff run before they eventually get bounced by the Terriers, of course. But then he joins the Bruins in March or April and has a cup of coffee with his team and shows something down the stretch. I think that is a sweeping success of a year for the Bruins and Hagens in terms of he's able to regain his confidence, build his game up a little bit more, add some extra weight, with the games being usually on the weekends over at BC as opposed to an 82-game grind here at the NHL level. And he's really ready to jump into a more featured spot going into 26-27, where he's all of a sudden a player that you can go into training camp being like, yeah, he's going to be a top 6 fixture. And I think that's the important thing with a guy like Hagens is instead of, having him sign that ELC and, show signs of growth, I think it's better that if you go into this upcoming year, I don't want Hagens playing 70, 80 games with this team and he's got 24 points, right? And it's not saying that he would be a bust there, but I feel like you'd hear that chatter, right? If he's going through his ups and downs and he's getting out-muscled and he's going to have extended scoring slumps, a lot of pressure on this kid now, right? This is the guy that I think the national media is looking at him as a player that, all right, why did this guy drop so much? If he's got, a rough first year when he's probably not ready for the NHL level and he's struggling, the national media is like, well, I guess we all were right that he wasn't a number one pick. What's up with this guy? And again, even if you see the promise, if you're a Bruins fan watching him games 1 through 82, I think you look at the end of the season, people are going to look at a 20-point season from a guy like that that's so talented and be like, what's up with this guy? I thought this guy was going to be the savior, right? I think there's a lot of pressure on a guy like James Hagens, and I don't think it'd be the best use of, the Bruins and what they're trying to build with this team by accelerating him, I think, by a year. I'd rather you keep him at BC for a year. He's right in your backyard. You're going to see a lot of highlights this year as the Bruins kind of go through their ups and downs of Hagens most likely dominating over at Chestnut Hill. You let him cook at that spot, have him have a really strong season, feel good about his game, have a good playoff run, just hopefully not too long with the Eagles, and then he joins the team down the stretch here. Maybe it helps you out for a playoff run. Even if it's not, I feel like he's going to show something in March and April that gets Bruins fans excited for next year. And I think that's the most important thing is this year is going to be, I think, a bit of a transition year, a bit of a bridge year, but if you are able to set that foundation, you're able to see a guy like Hagens continue to develop, maybe a guy like Fraser Minton at the NHL level, maybe a guy like Will Zellers in his first year. It does feel like if you're seeing a lot of these younger players take steps forward, if you're a Bruins fan and you're trying to look further down the line for hope of this team bouncing back and reasserting itself as a contender, I think it all comes down to these younger players and what they can do this year across very different levels of hockey. So, again, that is kind of some of the questions we've had so far today. We've got a lot more. We'll include some of these in our online portion of the mailbag over at boston.com. That's probably coming out this upcoming weekend. And we'll have plenty more talking about, I had questions about who's going to be the Bruins 20 goal scorers, looking again at whether the Bruins are a team worth investing in. Who could they possibly trade if they are, a team that is tanking or a team that, is going to, become sellers at the deadline. So we'll have plenty more to talk about. And we'll have all that over on boston.com and the Boston Globe in a couple of days. We're going to keep this format going moving forward to see if we're able to get more momentum with these types of stories going into this upcoming season. So again, you can follow me over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe. We have you covered every step of the way this Bruins offseason going into the 25-26 season. Again, this episode was sponsored by the CLNS Media Network and Prizepicks. Prizepicks is North America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download today and use code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. Prizepicks, run your game. And again, please subscribe to the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel and also Patriots Press Pass, Celtics All Access, and everything else on the CLNS Media Network. This was episode 348 of Poke the Bear. My name is Conor Ryan. You fans have a great rest of your week.